Hey, Theo Anest here with AvidMax Echo Fly Rods. I'm going to give you some tips that I like to work on when I'm trying to improve my casting. Going to go through the kind of progression I go through when I'm out at the park, working on both my accuracy, my distance, some of the things that I focus on and I'm always trying to improve upon. I think fly casting is a sport in itself. It's a ton of fun, and just spending, an hour every week or so just going out to a park and just working on your cast. It's fun to do, and you'll find that the time flies and you're going to become a much better caster by just working on a few key little things. So we'll set up the course and kind of go through it from there. All right, so once I get out to the park, I like to set targets at various distances. I like to use like little dinner plates that you put a rock on top of, or just some smaller targets that are going to really focus in your energy into being very accurate. From the bow hunter's world, aim small, miss small. If you learn how to cast to small targets, when you get out into a real world fishing situation, putting that fly where it needs to be is going to be a lot easier. Probably the most important part of all fly casting, from beginner to advanced, if you can learn how to do it, is rod tracking. And it's as simple as, is your rod going in a straight line from A to B on both the forward cast and the back cast? Every deviation from that is an imperfection in the fly cast. And what may only be an inch in wrist rotation or hand rotation here turns into about 3 feet at the end of a 9-foot fly rod with lever. And then by the time it's at the end of a fly line, that could be 20 feet. So just 1 little inch off here is 2 feet out there, and probably 20 feet of the line being out of line in the back cast. So if we can learn to always be in a straight line, A to B, both in our short cast, in close, then when we open up into more of a longer distance cast, just always keeping everything with the rod in a nice straight line. What I like to do, take your phone and just put it on video. I just put it down right in front of me, and then I just back up in a place where I can kind of see myself, and I'm just watching what my rod is doing. So right here, good, that was nice and straight. I'm gonna open up, boom, it's looking straight. We'll just keep working on it, and always constantly just watching the tracking of the rod, because everything's an opposite and equal reaction. So if I am hooking like this and coming around the corner like that on my back cast, then to get back in a line, I have to come like that on the forward cast a lot of times. Whereas the opposite and equal of a straight back cast is a straight forward cast. So mirror work, butt section, all important. Just groove that straight path of the rod into muscle memory, and you'll be a much better caster for it. The feel once I put the haul into my cast, especially my distance cast, is I'm not trying to bend the rod. That used to be my thought process, and it no longer is. Rather, I'm thinking more about throwing the rod, almost like a javelin, or really just throwing the line, where really all I'm trying to feel is the line, and the rod is just a lever that helps me do that with more leverage, nothing more. That's really what a rod should be like. But really, my goal is to feel like I'm just holding the line with my bare hands and I'm feeling it shoot. So the best way to get that feel is to literally learn how to get that feel. So the old lefty cray trick, casting without the rod, I think it's incredibly important for learning how to build line speed, hand speed, haul speed, how to, just everything that needs to happen in a good distance cast has to happen in order to cast without the rod. So if you could just emulate and always do exactly what you would do here when you're just throwing the line with a 9-foot rod, you would throw bombs consistently. It's a great way to build the feel that you're after of connection to the line. So starting here, really just trying to get that feel of body motion, everything that a good distance cast requires, you almost have to do when you're not using the rod. Once I've done that, no rod, then I start just working up the rod, and I really want to get deeply in tune with what every section of the rod feels like. So I've gone from no rod to just the first tip section of a rod. Learning how to cast with this is kind of where you first bring in, okay, well now I have a rod, how do I still emulate that, you know, kind of unconnected to the rod feeling of the cast? So this is where that comes in. Focusing just on, you know, good hand speed, good haul speed in order to create that cast with just the tip of the rod. So there, with just the tip, you know, 70 some feet. That's kind of where, call it good there. So now I've got half the rod in my hand, open stance. Focusing on just staying loose, just floppy, fast muscles, not strong muscles. Remember, loose muscles are fast muscles. We're looking for speed, not strength. Just quick, smooth progression into speed. We got 3/4 of the rod now. And this is where you really start to feel this rod, how much butt section it has in it. And you'll notice that there's definitely some stiffness and some power in this third section of the rod. Really just still focusing on just, you know, what my whole hand is doing, kind of what my rod is doing, kind of the feeling I'm after, that unconnected to the rod feeling where I'm just feeling the line and not the rod. Okay. And now finally, I'm gonna grab the whole rod. So now that I got the whole rod in my hand, we'll kind of go to what I focus on next. So we've talked about kind of your close stance. This is when you're trying to be really accurate. You don't need to have any shoulder rotation. It's just everything's out in front of your eye, kind of in front of your shoulder. Okay, that's what I call the accuracy cast. Everything's out in front. We're just trying to stay nice in a straight line. We don't need a lot of rotation. It's just straight to it, straight through it. When I'm trying to be accurate, there's two things. One is you gotta have the right amount of line out to hit the target. So if I'm throwing at this white plate, okay, if it's 20 feet and I am only casting the 16 feet, well then it's just quite literally doesn't have enough line to get there. So the way to figure out if you're far enough, it's called a hover. And what you're trying to do is you're just trying to make the leader turn over quickly and kind of, you'll see that it almost floats right there for a split second. So when you're trying to be accurate, you're using the hover to measure. Okay, so you'll watch here where the leader just kind of, it just kind of hangs for just a second. So you don't want to rush it back because if you're too fast here, you have no idea if you're far enough. But if you just let it, boom, hang, like you'll see that it just kind of floats there. And I can say, okay, that's pretty close. Then it comes back to the number one thing we've talked about the whole time is just tracking. Once you know your line is, you have enough line out, then it's quite literally just come back straight and come forward straight. Keep that rod right on track. And as long as you have the right amount of line out and you don't do anything weird, like physics will not allow you to miss. So right here, kind of measuring it and then boom, straight down. This is giving away a lot, so hopefully nobody too dangerous watches this video. This is what I'm thinking. In my head, I'm saying, grab it, touch it. Grab it, touch it. And it's like almost like this is go-go gadget arm. And I'm just trying to grab the target, pick it up, and then touch it. So I'm grabbing it, and then I'm touching it, putting it back down. So got it measured, grab it, touch it, grab it, touch it. Oh, a little long. So if you do shoot long, that just means you measured in properly. So what a lot of people do, especially in competition, like they'll throw a cast long like that and they're like, oh, and they just grab it back. No. Okay, you've got the easiest opportunity to learn. So if you've thrown a cast long, be it in a fishing situation where you get to make another cast, or certainly in a competition where you get 3 shots, grab it and strip it in so you know you're right at the right length. Okay, so now I know I've got the right amount of line out. Now all I need to do is just come straight down to the target, okay? And as long as the wind doesn't take you off, you'll be right on it. Grab it, touch it. Go gadget arm, touch it, touch it, touch it, touch it. So that's accuracy. Everybody's backcast is generally not great, mine included. So I'm constantly working on my backcast, and the way to work on your backcast, again, is just literally to work on your backcast and just separate it out. So the other thing is you have to see your backcast. So tracking and turning and watching your backcast is also important. So a lot of people get in the habit of always having their head forward. And I think in an actual fishing condition where you're casting to a target, I don't know that I would be turning my head back and then forward. I'd probably be just watching the target, but I want to build this into kind of muscle memory where I know what my backcast looks like when I'm not casting to a fish, or if I'm blind casting for distance, you know, something that we're not in a sight fishing situation, I like to watch my backcast just for, you know, practice of just improving it. Now people ask, do you like casting with the wind or against the wind? And I think it depends. Like, I could cast farther into this wind than I could cast with it because I'd be able to get a stronger backcast. We're gonna go open stance here, and again, all I'm thinking about here is just kind of coming to that key position and then flipping the rod. And what I'm looking for is kind of a straight line. So here's a straight line, and I'm picking out a spot. I think this light pole right behind me is about a straight line to the backcast, and I want to cast straight to that spot. So I'm going to come here and go boom, casting right to it. Boom, right there, okay? Then I'll throw my forward cast down. I'm going to come to the spot I would be at the front of my forward delivery. I'm going to rotate, and I'm going to cast straight to it, okay? And I'm just working on shooting high line speed into the backcast. So I'm going, yep, didn't track well. There we go, right there. And I'm just laying it down every time, just working on that feel of a good delivery where I'm making good loops into the backcast. Opened it too soon. That was good. That was good. All right, so what I'm finding now is if I try to gun it too early, loop opens. But if I'm smooth, and at the last second, kind of putting that power in back here, or that speed in, better backcast. So those are the things I'm always kind of working through on the backcast. So right now, like, I'm not even watching my forecast. I don't know, it might be good, it might not be. I have no idea what it's doing. I'm not even really paying attention. I'm just focusing on that strong backcast and how it reacts to the wind. Right there. Right there, okay? And then I try to figure out where I'm at. So right there, that right there is about a 70-foot carry. If you can throw 70 feet with speed into the backcast, 100 feet is no problem. Like, it'll just happen. You don't even have to try. It's just, but being able to consistently carry 70-ish feet into a strong backcast with a tight loop, that's really where the magic and distance comes from. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the real home run swing. And this is probably how I make most of my distance casts, is the guy who really put a definition to this, something that I was always kind of feeling and probably naturally doing but not necessarily aware of it, was Paul Arden, who's probably one of the best casters you'll ever see from the UK. He calls it the 170 backcast. So if you wanted to look up a guy worth paying attention to, Paul Arden, Nick Moore, those guys out of the UK, casting geniuses. So definitely shout out to them. But what they talk about is a stopless delivery on the backcast. And it makes total sense. So we have kind of this position here, which is our close stance. Then we go to here, we're kind of flipping the wrist over. Now the next stage of this is, some people will talk about drifting, where they go stop, kind of block off the forearm, and then follow back. And I guess you can do that, and it just kind of, this would be the drift, like this, where you're basically coming to that key position and then following it. But what I wonder is, okay, well, why would I stop here? And then if I'm gonna go that way anyway, why wouldn't I just come boop all the way there in one delivery like so? So I'm gonna go boom. So there's really no stop. Like, you know, people talk about stopping the rod. And I think at a certain point, getting that extra distance requires not necessarily, the only stop that happens is because quite literally you're fully extended, okay? So the way we do this is, it's just kind of right here. The action we're thinking about is just this, where you're leading with your elbow. Okay, so we're coming here, and this is where we go pop. And it allows you to just carry so much more line. Okay, so I'm working on that delivery. And if you dial this down, I mean, there will come days if, you know, a lot of times when people have a hard crosswind over their right shoulder, then they want to try to cast off this opposite shoulder. If you dial in this stopless delivery, all you're gonna do is you'll end up just turning like this, and you're gonna throw your back cast forward, where you're basically going boom. Alrighty, so now, kind of worked on the back cast. Now we start tying it all together. I'll finally work on a few where I'm really kind of just going for it all. Like how far can I throw it? Stopless back cast, going all the way with it. So major focus here, good line speed on the back cast, good tight loop on the back cast. Let the forward cast just go, don't try to muscle it. Hopefully you got some tips and some little tricks you can use out of this. Learn to love fly casting. It's really a sport in itself, something that I enjoy doing just for the sake of casting. I think it's one of the few things that really separates fly fishing from other forms of fishing, conventional fishing, is that we're using a rod to cast a weightless object, and the act of doing that is really what separates fly fishing. So it's one of those things though that I think has slowly become eroded out of our sport, is the art of fly casting. You don't necessarily need to cast well to catch fish, which is great, but at some point, the biggest thing is learning how to cast. Flip Pallet talks about getting the last 40 feet. That's so absolutely true. Getting to those destinations, getting the rods, everything you need to go there, that's great and all, but when you get there, you gotta be able to get that fly the last 40 feet to those fish. So learn to enjoy casting. If you have any questions, reach out to AvidMax. These guys are great. Be happy to share any knowledge they have as well. So hope you enjoyed.